In the capital of the Kingdom of Gallia, the king and his court are to be executed in public. The executioner snapped his fingers, and the guillotine immediately dropped down to kill 97th, then the 98th, then the 99th. They believed they could end the tyrannical regime from the inside, but in the end, it was they who undermined them. With the 100th dead, the man called to the citizens, saying the king and his minions will no longer harm them. The age of oppression ends that day, and in its place, they usher in the era of liberation. Dragging footsteps walk across the platform, prompting the crowd to go wild. They scream insults and call for their immediate death. Quinn, the first counsel to the king, considers them idiots out for violence. He was bound and unable to do anything, but they don't even realize that they're being fooled by the very people who are behind the spectacle of subjugation. The Order of Liberation is a group of aristocrats supposedly fighting for the people, but were actually founded by the Desac family. They are the real tyrants who have been pulling the strings from the shadows for centuries. Their next move is to have people believe that liberation is imminent and use it as a pretext to slaughter their enemies once and for all. Addressing the people, the executioner says it's the moment they've all been waiting for. He calls for the king and his advisors. In reality, the Desacs don't care who serves as the king, as long as it's a puppet they can control. They're accused of starving the citizens and allying themselves with the demons that raised their homes. In their thirst for power, the advisors are accused of sacrificing thousands of their brethren. Told that the Order of Liberation won't stand for such things, the crowd roars. Quinn scorns them, knowing they invented the entire thing. The so-called clandestine meetings with the Demon King is the family's excuse to serve them up to the revolutionary mob. What they don't know is that they failed to capture their secret weapon. Worried and similarly bound, Elizabeth asks if he's sure that their ally will come. Quinn has full faith that his friend of 20 years was watching from within the crowd. Irked by their mumbling, the executioner pulls on their magical chains. Looking at the woman, the guard considers it a waste of such a delectable being. He holds her face and says that since she only has a few minutes left in the world, they can just spend it together at the back of the platform. This makes Quinn stop and order him to take her hands off her. Ignoring him, the guard starts to drag her for a little pleasure before she loses her head. The king's council loses his patience and starts to release his power in anger. While the soldiers try to take control of the situation, the sheer burst of his power sends a bunch of them flying back. The man harassing Elizabeth takes the brunt of it and starts to break apart from inside. Since the captive was starting to break free from his restraint charm, they get into formation and try to reinforce the spell. With this, Quinn is forced to bow down, subdued in an instant. He curses it all, unable to use his power as he likes. Surrounding him with weapons, they tell him to stop his squirming. However, the smile hasn't left his face, certain their positions will be reversed in a bit. After all, the one who's going to save them will be there soon enough. The one he's waiting for is Silas, his best friend, and the strongest ally they have. They met at the academy during the time when their powers had just awakened. His family was mercilessly murdered on the orders of the Desac family. At one point, they quickly became brothers at arms, each climbing the ranks of nobility and striving to end the tyranny from the inside. Unfortunately, they were betrayed, and he was arrested along with his companions, but Silas was still free. The Order remains unaware of both his intentions and his awesome power. Quinn is up next for the guillotine. Seeing him walk up, the executioner calls him one of the king's most devious abettors, the tyrant who led the realm to ruin and famine. Called on, the council stood straight and stepped forward with his head held high. He made sure to be prepared, expecting his savior and best friend to come at any moment. The executioner asks the counselor if he has any last words to speak. Quinn advises him against being so confident, knowing exactly who's behind their order. By laying their trap, they blundered and failed to capture their strongest member, Silas. Repeating the name, the man started taking his helmet off and sent the captive into shock and disbelief. The one he considered his brother and greatest ally was the one who betrayed them. He refused to believe it, saying it can be anyone but him. After all, he's his best friend and the hope of the people. Under the deadly atmosphere, Silas tells him not to exaggerate too much. For all these years, he's been playing along to his little plan and has remained undetected. To explain in the least, he says the Desacs were just more convincing that he is. Quinn questions how all this was even possible. They've known each other for 20 years and have been through thick and thin like real siblings bonded by fate. Smirking, Silas asks him not to take it personally and says he must get back to work. He puts his helmet back on and tells the guards to put him into the guillotine. As shocking as it may be, Quinn finally knows who betrayed them and who will be causing each of his comrades' executions. Filled with rage, he growls at his old friend, vowing to make him pay for his sins. Power bursts forth from his body, manifesting as a demonic presence above him. Glowering at his enemies, he uses his ability to take a few soldiers out in an instant. They think he's managed to break free of the charm, but they see the council, charging at them like a beast while his body was still restrained. Quickly and easily disarming one of the targets, he catches a sword's handle mid-air and grips it between his teeth, the flow of his energy wrapped around his body. Meanwhile, the soldiers try their best to subdue him, but Quinn was already piercing through. On a nearby tower, archers notched their empowered bows in an attempt to kill him. Seeing this, he sends his power to take care of them from meters away. They're devoured and blasted off of the tower, eliminated by the demonic prisoner. Other soldiers find their chance and work to reinforce the charm of restriction. He was surrounded and gradually being pushed down by their magic, but nothing was strong enough to quell the rage over being betrayed by his most trusted friend. Even Silas was getting sick of the games they were playing, so the two charged at each other, eager to end things once and for all. Bonded like siblings, their ill-fated relationship took a turn for the worse. Quinn dropped before he could even reach his target, and he's forced to let go of his blade. Meanwhile, the traitor stood tall, saying one must do something himself, if they want it done correctly. The restraints were tightened to its absolute max, and there was nothing the captive could do. Grabbed by the neck, he's then thrown onto the guillotine, where the piece of wood snaps right into place around his neck. Realizing that he's going to die, Quinn questions what he did to be betrayed like this. Silas assures his old friend that there was no huge turning point, and that he was merely a pawn that outlived its usefulness. With a snap of his fingers, the guillotine fell, and the council's head dropped with it. While his consciousness was still intact, he closed his eyes, unable to accept that this is how things are going to end. The world was in flames. Upon opening his eyes, he felt intense heat, and saw raging chaos that made him wonder if he was in hell. The thought of dedicating his life to liberating people from tyranny, and being sent to hell regardless, was ridiculous enough to make him laugh. His eyesight clears up, and the scene becomes more apparent. As if hit with hopelessness, he fell to his knees in sadness, believing he deserves none of this at all. Just then, he hears someone telling him not to lose his head and take cover. The council recognizes his village and wonders if his hell is reliving its destruction. He even recognizes the armor of the invaders, belonging to Count Ravel's army. A young man screams at him to run for his life. Quinn freezes upon seeing Gabin, a friend he hasn't seen in 20 years, since he was killed during this very night. The friend ran to escape, telling him to follow. However, he tripped over a corpse on the ground and tumbled down in the middle of the battlefield. This little mistake was going to end up killing him, costing him his chance to escape. A soldier raised his axe over the villager, who dared to make an enemy of their count. Realizing that his friend was about to die again, Quinn's body moved on its own and leapt into action. He grabs a nearby shield from the ground and makes it just in time to block the heavy axe coming their way. The soldier is surprised, more so as the fighter follows through with a kick to his side. On the other hand, the first council was stunned and wondered why his attack was so weak. He couldn't even feel his powers surging inside him anymore. Commending the peasant's technique, the soldier stood before him, and on his armor, Quinn saw the reflection of his face. His scar was not there, and he was young again as if time had rewound. Gabin screamed at his unmoving and distracted friend, telling him to run away from the enemy's swing. It was already too close to dodge, so he reacted instinctively and instead grabbed the man's wrist. Since he was so strong and could barely be held back, the young man now has to rely on technique to win. The enemy laughs at his feeble attempt, but increases the power and bears his blade down on the villager. As he was about to be sliced into two pieces, Quinn remembers that the armor he's wearing has thin plating around the neck area. Pivoting on his foot, he turns and lets go to dodge the sharp blade by inches. Retaining the skills he honed from 20 years of fighting, he smacks the sword out of the man's hands and swiftly takes it for himself. With experience most of them can't even hope to have, he cuts through the soldier's neck and takes his head right off. With technique his young self never had before, Quinn beheaded the enemy soldier. Delightfully shocked, Gabin asks where he learned to do such a thing. The regressor turned to his old friend and experimentally held his face, confirming that it really is him. His odd and crazy behavior is waved off as a side effect of shock, but he knew deep inside what just happened. It's true that he's gone back in time 20 years, but how was that even possible? He clearly remembers being on the guillotine and having his head chopped off. Seeing him lost in his thoughts, Gabin brings him back to reality with a firm pat and says they have to go and save their families from the invaders. Around them, the Count's men were pillaging and burning the entire village. He's specifically gone back to the day when Ravel's army suppressed the revolt in their home. It's the day his friends and family died, and the gruesome image was still vivid in his mind. Reminded of this, they sped forward to save his loved ones. It is still unclear why he's been brought back to this moment, but that doesn't matter right now. This time, Quinn isn't going to let evildoers harm his family. Before his death, he was among the most powerful warriors in Gala, and one of the few who could challenge the Deus Ex. However, he's now back in his teenage body. His powers haven't awakened yet, and he still hasn't enrolled in the academy. In other words, he's just a simple peasant for now. While running to his home, he sees a bolt of magic shoot through the air. Fortunately, he reacts fast enough and pulls Gabin back in time to save him. The bolt hits the wall, and they peer over to see a noble. Zivald, the Count's son, was striding towards them and surging with power. A couple of civilians bowed and begged him to spare their house, which was all they had. Smiling darkly, he calls them rats and sparks with magic. If they won't give him their house, then he might as well burn it along with them. He releases a wave of energy, which cuts the family and their home in half. Meanwhile, Quinn cursed the scum, remembering that he slaughtered his parents as well. That said, there's nothing he can do against the minor nobleman without his powers. The plan for now is to quietly move through the rooftops and reach his house undetected. This works out and they reach his home fast, but see the invaders already moving in through the rubble. As they were already there, a fight was basically inevitable. Gabin tries to stop him, wanting to call for help first, but he doesn't have that much time before they decimate his home. Without any nobles, they were just common foot soldiers of the Count's army. It's true that he doesn't have his powers, but his memories of 20 years on the battlefield are still intact. Encouraged by this bulk of experience, he leaps into action and crashes into his home through the window. There, he immediately sees the men, already laying hands on his family. He counts 3 intruders in total. They see and try to subdue him, but Quinn has already gotten his hands on a pair of kitchen knives. Saying he'd like to see them try, the veteran throws one at an enemy. The blade is lodged into a man's neck before they could even react. Now there were only 2 left to go. While the soldiers watched their comrade fall lifeless from one blow, their enemy was already charging in with deadly speed. They react and one manages to block with his sword in time. During this intense clash, Quinn feels the other intruder coming from behind. A normal man would be defenseless in this situation, especially as he can neither move forward nor back. With that said, he can still go up. He leaps high into the air and dodges the sword swing, which instead hits the man's comrade. There was only one left to go, and he dropped right behind him. All his life, he's dreamed of the things he could have done to his family's killers. Never in his wildest dreams did he think he'd ever be able to see them alive again. As such, he shows the man mercy and kills him with minimal pain. Their home has been defended, and his family ran to hug their savior. Quinn wraps his arms around them, saying he missed them all these years. Confused by what he means, his father asks where he learned to fight like that, so he just promises to explain things later. For now, they have to leave for the forest where it's safer. He remembers it well. The only survivors that night were the people who fled into the woods and returned at daybreak. They reunite with Gabin, who was outside, and tell him to come along. Since his parents' house are at the edge of the forest, they're already safe. He remembers this as well, and how they survived while their son died. Determined to change that fate, Quinn leads the group to safety. So many villagers lost their lives that day, killed by the Count's vicious men. Now that he has a second chance, he has to use it well. They manage to regroup with the others and prepare a camp for the night. Telling them to stay there, he intended to do something else but suddenly lost his strength. His vision turned blurry, but he felt himself falling. While they called to him, the young man passed out from pushing his weak body to its limits. As soon as he closed his eyes, he dreamed of his tragic past and relived the nightmare. With his comrades bound and watching, his best friend called him a pawn who outlived his usefulness. Just like that, the traitor beheaded him like they didn't spend 20 years together. Lastly, and oddly enough, he hears Gabin's pained screams. Quinn wakes up with the warm sunlight on him. There was no longer any doubt about it, and he really did regress 20 years back. Regardless of the reason, he now has a huge advantage over his enemies. He's determined not to fail at any cost, but he still needs to awaken his power to succeed. Just then, he hears an ear-piercing scream and runs as fast as possible to regroup with the villagers. Was it the guards? Instead of enemies, he sees Gabin, sad and kneeling on the ground. His father explains that the young man will need some time, as the soldiers killed his parents. Quinn couldn't believe it, certain that his friend's mother and father survived in his previous life. Quinn questions what happened, remembering how Gabin's parents lived by the forest. His father sighs and shares that Zivald went on a rampage, after finding out that some of his men died. In other words, it was his fault for killing those soldiers. By saving his parents, he ended up orphaning the friend he held dearly. Similarly, falling to his knees, Quinn looked to the sky. Calling to whoever sent him there, He asks if he was being punished, and if he's going to be tormented for eternity. His father consoles him, saying he mustn't blame himself for what happened. Considering everything, the true villains are the Ravels who cause violence and chaos. Told that he saved Gabin, he professes his pride in his son. The old man was right, and he couldn't keep lamenting his fate. Having been given a second chance, he must now use it to create a better future. To make the most out of his advantage, he'll have to start by awakening his powers once more. As long as he's weak, he won't be able to defeat a soldier, let alone change his fate. This time, he'll protect whoever it is he can protect. Maidie, his little sister, whom he abandoned in his previous life. After the death of their parents, he left the village, bent on revenge. To follow his desires, he left her in the care of Alder, the leader of their small town, and only later on learned that he abused her constantly. When the opportunity came, he sold her to the Count's men, who then continued the abuse. She cried and called helplessly to him, but it was too much. In the end, she decided to end her lonely life forsaken by the cruel world. The memory and regret still haunts him. This time, he hugs her tight, promising to never make the same mistake again. Just then, he freezes and realizes what might have happened. He rushes to Gabin and asks where his sister, Hana, is. Still mourning, he says Alder is taking care of her now that their parents are gone. By saving Maidie, he doomed his friend's sister, just as it was with their parents. Trying to act fast, Quinn tells him to take her from the chief, as he cannot be trusted. The young man is confused and wonders why he'd say that about their village head. Just then, a low voice spoke, asking what was happening. Alder approached and told them to give the mourning young man some space. The others don't know yet, but the evil man was hiding his true colors. With a warm smile, the chief encourages Gabin to stay strong and promises to take care of Hana. Ignorant to his real nature, the orphan boy couldn't be more thankful. Quinn walks away, as no one is going to believe him, no matter how much he insists. As he walks away to get some rest, the sun sets and the moon rises over the forest. In his former life, he went into the mountains alone after his parents were killed. By pure chance, he awakened the dormant power in him a few weeks later. Now he knows how to trigger the awakening all on his own, and can do it in 2 days. He jumps from roof to roof, cursing Zivald, who did more damage this time than the last. Fortunately for him, another rat was in need of his attention. He arrives at Alder's house, and immediately hears an odd combination of cries and barks. Inside, a couple of rabid dogs were snarling at Hana, who was already beaten and in tatters. She begged them to stay away, but the chief grabbed her hand, telling her to enjoy it since no one was coming for her anyway. Whether in this life or the next, he truly is vermin through and through. Seeing Quinn, the old man asks what he was doing there. He was already ready for a fight and threatened him with death. Not wasting a moment, he orders the dogs to attack. This was a problem as he couldn't let them get near Hana, so the young man ran out of the room. As soon as they follow, he pivots back and locks the door to keep them outside. Alder glared at him. Since his axe was going to be in his skull soon, he decided to tell him a little secret. The chief reveals that he conspired with the Count's men to kill his family so he can get Maidie. Since they did a terrible job, he'll just have to do it himself. Quinn was unfazed and just asks if he's done spouting. He was already aware of his ploy with the Count, including the promise to make him a noble after. Alder is shocked, not knowing who could have told the boy. Actually, he did, right before he was disemboweled. Quinn already killed him before, when he found out about what he did to Maidie, and now he takes his blades out, undeniably looking forward to doing it again. He charged in while the chief swung his axe. Despite his age and size, he moved very fast, but his actions were far too predictable, especially for a veteran like him. Given an opening, it was Quinn's turn to strike. He slashes through the legs of the old man, who couldn't believe that the weak boy was hurting him. Powering through it, Alder calls it a fluke and swings again, but this attack is as easy to dodge as the first. The next slash runs across the chief's back, and now he was sweating in worry, questioning who could have taught him to fight like that. It's none of his concern, and what he should be worried about is being cut into ribbons. Quinn was going in for the kill, but is told not to be so quick to forget who between them is the master. Alder's body glowed, and he shot a wave of electricity that sent the young man flying. He couldn't believe it, but for some reason, his enemy was able to wield electricity. In his previous life, he was so strong that the chief couldn't even do a thing to stop him. What he didn't know was that the Count didn't just promise to make him a noble man. He also helped Alder awaken his powers. The nobles are tyrants who exploit people for their own gain, allowing them to bathe in wealth. Their oppression is founded on their mastery of a formidable power, which is manipulating electricity. By creating and channeling electric currents, nobles can increase their speed, form defensive barriers, and even turn their adversaries into ashes. This power was granted to them by God, who entrusted the nobles to protect humanity against the demon hordes that stream up from the southern lands to devour their people. At least, that's what the stuck-up filth wants them to believe. The truth is that anyone can gain this power, as long as they take so-called waking pills. These are secret drugs concocted by nobles, which grant those who ingest it the ability to manipulate electricity. Given this as part of their deal, Alder awakened and was now part of the best-kept secret in all of the land. Finally, he'll be able to leave the cesspit village they lived in and join the ranks of the nobles. Quinn scoffs at him, knowing he'll probably end up a lackey doing dirty work. His words provoke the chief, who thinks he's too noisy for someone who's about to be killed. He shoots another bolt of electricity, but the veteran dodges perfectly, knowing he likely can't even control his power yet. Winning is possible, but if he so much as touches him, he'll literally be cooked. While ducking and thinking of a way to beat the opponent, he sees a metal spool nearby. It's a roll of copper, which is great for conducting electricity. Quinn takes the item. His plan is risky and might kill him, but he only has one chance to make it work. The enemy was getting faster, and he needed to think of a way to keep his distance. For a reason Alder doesn't know, the young man spreads the copper thread throughout the room and waits for his best shot. Still hiding his secret weapon, Quinn provokes the proud chief and mocks him for missing so much. This works on the foolishly arrogant man, who charges his fists with all his power and shoots a huge blast of electricity forward. Matching the timing perfectly, the young man tosses the spool up, intercepting the bolt and conducting all of the electricity. His plan was working and the wire was coursing with the energy. Alder was shocked that his opponent had closed the gap without getting hit. Every time he dodges, he spins the web of copper, and every attack of his charges it. It was time for the final strike. Calling the end of the match, Quinn drives his foot into the chief's gut, sending him back and right into the web of copper. The surging electricity travels throughout his body, cooking him from inside out. Charred and smoking, Alder falls to the ground in disbelief and asks how the child possibly defeated him. It's surprising that he's actually still alive. Even for such a big bug, electricity that strong would normally kill whatever it touches. Seeing the young man take his blade, the vile chief tries to strike a deal. He promises to present him to the count and even make him a noble. Quinn scowled at the man, who had the nerve to beg for mercy after all the horror he inflicted on Matey. Alder was confused, knowing he hadn't done anything to his sister. Again, he's cowardly scum. Whether in this life or the previous one, and even in the next, every time they cross paths, Quinn is going to destroy him without mercy no matter what. The old man's life ends with a butchering cleaver deep in his head. With that settled, it was time to save Hannah, who had passed out from all that happened. He carries her, promising to take her safely back to Gavin. With the girl in his arms, he kicks the door to the room open and is greeted by the barking dogs he locked out earlier. However, one deadly glare from him is enough to silence the little pets. Making them heel, he walks away and into the cold night. Back in the woods, the others were worried about the young man who had suddenly disappeared. Just then, they hear a knock and someone opening the door. Gavin runs to see his friend, but is shocked to find his unconscious sister in his arms. Asked what happened, Quinn reiterates that it was Alder. The sly chief connived with the count to assault the village and take their sisters. Hearing this, they worry that his friend was followed there, but he assures them that Alder won't be harming anyone ever again. Then addressing everyone in the room, he says there's something he needs to do. He can't tell them anymore, but he'll be gone for a few days, and they have to stay there. His father smiled warmly, saying he wanted to support the son who saved them all. After all, Ravel's tyranny must be stopped once and for all. Taking his father's hand firmly, Quinn says he won't disappoint them, and promises to save their people. Assured that his family was already proud of him, the regressor ventured on a journey alone. After a while of walking, he was almost at his destination and just needed to go a bit further. In his old life, he fled from the village after his parents' deaths. Mad with grief and thirsty for revenge, he wandered the countryside for weeks and found himself atop a mountain. He was taking shelter beneath a tree when it happened. A random bolt of lightning struck and hit him right in the chest. Like a true rod, lightning always strikes that one particular tree. Fortunately, a storm was on its way, and it'll be the perfect time for him to trigger his awakening all by himself. There is nothing divine about the noble's God-given power. Every human has the potential to wield electricity as long as they are able to unlock it. There is a region in the brain that, when activated, grants this ability. To unlock this easily, nobles developed awakening pills, thus ensuring a constant stream of powerful users from generation to generation. However, this wasn't always the case. The first to discover this power was struck by lightning, which is a more effective method. While it is more dangerous, it grants far more power than the pills do. Almost all who try are killed, which is why the nobles studied and made the pills in the first place. In his previous life, Quinn was accidentally struck by lightning and survived, and now he's going to do it again by waiting for the incoming storm. The next bolt it releases will be for him alone. The dark clouds drew closer by the second, and he finally saw what he's waiting for, a brilliant flash of yellow. When the huge lightning bolt came as expected, the young man cackled loudly, knowing his path to vengeance was set. However, the bolt doesn't strike the tree, but the spot a few inches from it. It missed. Knowing he won't get a second chance, Quinn moved to chase after the storm cloud that was now moving over the chasm. Determined, he jumped over the cliff, hoping that the rope wrapped around his waist doesn't snap. It's as if he was being tested, and the gods wanted to see how far he would go to exact his revenge. Just like that, his body hurtled over the cliff. Fortunately, the lightning struck as he had hoped, hitting him right at the back while he fell. At the same time, power surged within him, making his eyes glow for a few moments. The electrocution makes him pass out soon after, still smoking. The rope anchoring him to the top later started to move, and a huge flare of power burst forth from the bottom. His hands clung to the edge, and Quinn emerged, overflowing with power and the desire to make his enemies pay. He finally has his power back. In his former life, it took him years to develop mastery over the electricity, as awakening one's potential was just the beginning. That said, things are different this time, and he has 20 long years of experience to ease the way forward. He tests his power out and breaks through a boulder. Not done yet, the young man waves a few fingers around, forcing the chunks of stone to shatter from the inside. At least he knows that his magic isn't bad at all. Now he has to check on his speed. Planting his feet into the ground, he imbues them with electrical charges and sped forward to cover a massive distance in an instant. At this rate, he was satisfied and found it acceptable. For the last part, he wonders if he can summon his avatar. Quinn grits his teeth and gathers all his power, willing it to materialize. However, a pathetic wisp of energy appears above his head, making it clear that he still lacks the power for that. Avatars are possessed by truly great warriors and serve as a manifestation of the wielder's soul. Immense mastery of the electrical arts is the only thing that makes summoning possible. A single noble with an avatar can decimate entire regiments and obliterate their enemies. Fortunately, the area he's in now gives him a lot of space to train and practice. To his surprise, a light voice suddenly called his name. It was Maidie, who was delightfully hiding behind a tree. She decided to follow him since he was being so mysterious at home. With that said, it was her turn to ask questions, and wonders when he got so strong. Seemingly caught, Quinn decides to tell her the future. They sit down for the conversation, and he frankly claims to be from the future. Not buying it, she scolds him for joking and punches him as punishment. It's a natural response to such a ridiculous statement after all. Moving on, the girl gets hyped up over him becoming awakened, since it changes everything. He now has a chance to enter the academy, protect them from the evil nobles, and make a lot of money. Quinn snaps his little sister before she gets too deep into it. It's true that he'll protect them with his life, but he asks her to keep it a secret for now. Although he promises to explain better later, she waves it off and smiles, and says she already trusts him with all her heart. Maidie then asks if the scar on his face is permanent, prompting him to look and be annoyed that it appeared in the exact same spot as last time. The siblings spend a long night training. With the sun high up later on, Quinn stood still with his eyes closed and his hands clasped together. Receiving his signal, Maidie throws a bunch of stones from a tree branch far up. Using the electromagnetic waves, he senses the projectiles and, with charged legs, sped through the land to snatch them all from the air. Although it's over in an instant, he only manages to take 14 out of 15 stones. She's impressed by how fast he's learning, and says it's as if he's been using it all his life. With that said, she asks him to help her down from the tree, but he flatly refuses to stop until he successfully takes all 15. She throws the stones in anger, complaining that it's been 4 hours since they started. The young man continues and releases several slashes of energy. His sister wants to finish up as he hit all 15, but he suddenly increases the target by 1. After the death of Gabon's parents, he cursed the force that sent him back in time, feeling as though it was punishing him for whatever reason. However, the week he spent training with his sister, as intense as it has been a great source of joy for him. He gets to see her so happy and full of life, and at the end of the long days, he thinks to himself that it's the best thing that's happened to him in 20 years. His fateful encounter with Silas was going to happen sooner or later. For now, he has to take care of the Ravel family or the tyrants who burned his village to the ground, mercilessly slaughtered his parents, and caused his sister enough pain to end her life. In his previous life, he was never able to take revenge against them. By the time he mastered his powers, his high rank and nobility made it too dangerous to move against them. especially with the bigger plan to take the regime down. Now, thinking about it, he curses that wretched plan. Putting his hands together, he materializes a sword made of pure electricity and sends it flying through a tree. This time around, he won't bother with subtlety. In the eastern province of the kingdom was Ravel Castle. There, a lone man moved in the night, leaping above its walls. Cloaked in darkness and electricity, he sneaks around the area. The castle itself is heavily guarded by soldiers, but it's a good thing Quinn can move at the speed of lightning, which they don't even notice. He hears a voice by the window, ordering someone to take the food to the nobles. The chef orders his cooks around, not wanting to be killed from serving cold food. The timing was perfect, and now the intruder just needs a notable distraction. Jumping around some more, he finds a bunch of guards, bored and barely staying awake. They complain about being scammed by Alder, who supposedly promised them women. One man spoke up, reporting that someone killed their contact. The news stuns them, but one still has the gall to worry about the girls. They're the same trash who planned to violate Maidie and Hannah. Monsters like them deserve to be punished brutally. Granting it himself, Quinn cuts off the head of the statue he was on, and it falls to crush the unsuspecting guard below. Although the other men are shocked, they don't yet realize that it was an attack by an intruder and think it's an accident from a loose piece of the old castle. Not caring for their dead comrade, they head out to look for a cleaner. With the soldiers gone, Quinn is free to travel further along a clear and undisturbed path. The castle is still a maze of rooms and towers, so he can't just blunder through them. Wanting a better view of things, he heads to the top of a tall tower, easily scaling it with his feet and powers alone. Clinging to the rod at the very top, he successfully finds the Count's quarters and jumps down with a destination. His plan is to start from the top and work his way down. Upon reaching a guarded door, it's easy to conclude that the Count is on the other side. This time, the wretched man will pay for his sins and crimes. The soldiers saw him as he blatantly approached, but they were too slow, and Quinn was already going in for the kill. Holding their metal helmets, he courses electricity through and electrocutes them from head to toe. Since they won't be needing their swords anymore, he takes on for himself and kicks the door open. Intruding on the Count and his family, he crashes their dinner, saying it's time to pay the price for his wrongdoings. Ravel uncaringly looks at the uninvited guest, while Zyval drinks and gloats about being right. As he said, the man who killed Alder was sure to come for them next. The Count was still skeptical, not believing that such a runt could have killed the village chief, not unless he stole the fake noble's awakening pills. Calling to the young man, he condescendingly asks if he feels a bit more potent than usual. His belittling words reminded Quinn of the reality. Nobles only acted with contempt towards commoners, and there were no exceptions. To them, he is no more threatening than a fly, but it's time to change all that. He confesses to killing Alder, the traitor they helped plan the attack on his village. With his confirmation, Zevald asks for the 100 pieces of gold he bet with his father. Ravel yawned, completely unbothered by it all. He assumed the pathetic chief was killed because of a pathetic squabble, believing the village savages would kill each other for a piece of meat. Just then, a wave of energy cut through the meal on his silverware. The Count is asked if he knows what the pot-bellied pig is. It's the nickname the nobles in the capital have given to him. In Quinn's previous life, he spent a lot of time around high nobility, and one of their favorite pastimes was mocking provincial nobles. Ravel was no exception, of course. No longer nonchalant, the Count is insulted by his impudent words. Count and Countess Ravel, also known as the pot-bellied pig and his ugly sow, they are all peasants to someone higher. Drawn into the wave of insults, the lady breaks her chalice in anger. She shoots a blast of electricity to burn the intruder to a crisp. As the smoke settled, they saw the young man standing there, completely unharmed. He asks if that's all the ugly sow was capable of. She couldn't believe that he's still alive, but since he is, she's eager to find out if he can withstand a full-powered attack. Before she could attack again, his own red whip of energy hit her. The meager attack befuddles her at first, but the woman's body suddenly jerks and shakes as she loses control of her power. Clumsy wielders like her can't channel power safely, a usual mark of an untrained beginner. Ravel worries and calls to his wife. However, all it takes is a small spark from Quinn. With his trigger, the unstable power within her explodes while she is still in the air. Her family screamed as they watched her be blasted and fall lifelessly on the ground with a loud thud. The intruder consoles the Count, promising to have him join her soon enough. Unwilling to let that happen so easily, Zyvald blocks his attack with his bare hands, allowing his father to circle behind the attacker. The center of the room explodes from their power, but Quinn manages to back away in time before it hits him. They walk to the serf who dared to attack a noble. As punishment for his crimes, they'll be sure to eliminate him and move on to raise his village next. Smiling at their threats, the young man tells the pigs to listen up and says the wolf has arrived to hunt them down. Zevold moves first, eager to avenge his dead mother, but his attack was so slow compared to Quinn. It was child's play to avoid such meager and clumsy attacks. They might have awakened, but it's all from the pills, and nothing in comparison to his lightning-charged strength. That said, facing two at the same time makes it dangerous, as he has to keep minding the other. The Count attacks the moment he dodges to avoid the sun's blows. Ravel forces an opening for them, and prompts Zevold to take the chance to attack. Ready to finish it, Quinn stands between their supercharged fists. He releases his own power, and catches each punch with his bare hands. A quick kick to the gut takes the Count out of commission. As for the Sun, he's terrorized his village for far too long. The pathetic nobles called themselves God's chosen warriors. Now it's time to wash away all their sins. Still holding Zevold's hand, he blasts the young noble apart. Ravel screamed upon watching another family member be killed. Enraged, he gathered all the energy in his body and unleashed it on the brat, terrorizing his home. However, he fell to the ground upon seeing him standing, unharmed after taking his full force. Finally, in fear, he questions just who this man is. Quinn calls himself a simple peasant who is a mere nobody who suffered from their cruelty all his life. As such, he's decided that enough is enough, and that it was time to bring an end to their tyranny. Ravel finally realizes that he must have gotten his powers from lightning itself. Kneeling hopelessly, the Count accuses him of taking everything from him, but Quinn sets things straight, and says he's merely cleaned out a pigsty. He's called a reckless fool for challenging the nobles. By killing the Count, he'll be signing his own death warrant, and be hunted down by the rest. The young man takes a good look at him. The pendant on his neck is a symbol of his nobility. Quinn snatches it away, unwilling to be scared by some cheap jewelry. Ravel screams, saying a peasant like him isn't even worthy enough to touch it. Once he's dead, the high nobles themselves will track the assassin down. He's told not to be so sure about that. Quinn stares at his reflection on the pendant. Declaring that he'll be doing the hunting this time around, he grips his sword tight and cuts through the Count's neck. Inside the castle Ravel, Quinn is doing some snooping around with one goal in mind, which is to obtain arcanite. It is known to be the most expensive ore in the world, used by the nobles to create their crests. It allows them to amplify their electric powers. However, given its price, only the nobles in the capital possess it in large quantities. Remembering that Count Ravel used to boast about having it in his lands, he thinks that the man must have hoarded it in his personal chamber. With that in mind, he rushes toward his chamber and finds a treasure box. He opens it using his power and is frustrated to find only a small portion of the ore. He curses the Count for deceiving him since he was expecting to find enough to fashion a weapon. He needs more than the sliver for his plans. With the Ravels gone, the villagers have nothing to fear, and it will take time for the nobles to replace the Count. And with the chaos that she is planning in the capital, they will have far more pressing concerns than governing a distant province, which means his family will be safe while he is enrolled in the academy. He smiles at the thought, glad that he can keep his family safe. He cannot wait to tell them that he has already awakened his powers and see the look on their faces. He wears a sentimental smile again, recalling that in his previous life, he came down the mountain half dead. That day, he thought that he had simply been electrocuted. Injured and dizzy, he managed to drag himself back to the village before collapsing in a daze and confusion. The villagers came to his aid, worried about what happened to him. He assured them that he was fine and that he was just worn out. But suddenly, he created his very first electric spark. The current ran through his body, sending jolts of tension. He was as shocked as the villagers when they saw the spark at the tips of his fingers. The whole village celebrated and carried him on their shoulders and shouted his name. They were full of laughter and happiness, ecstatic that the boy finally awakened his power. For the villagers, he was the beacon of hope for a better life, a noble who was going to appeal for the good of the people. Because of him, they would finally have enough resources, and they would be protected against the local lords. At present, now that his power has awakened again, he wonders how they will react this time. However, a sudden realization dawns on him. Feeling dread slowly sinking in, he looks around the village and discovers that it is completely deserted with deafening silence. He trembles in fear, thinking that his village was once again attacked by the enemies. He rushes like a lightning bolt toward his home, utterly worried about his sister and family. He barges into his home like a madman, his heart pounding with fear inside his chest. To his horror, his house is empty, but he cannot find any signs of struggle. Starting to get crazy, he frantically searches for everyone. Just as he is about to break down, he hears a loud pop, followed by roaring cheers. It turns out, the villagers prepared a surprise for him. They all celebrate the fact that he awakened his power that will grant him nobility. His family is so proud of him, especially his sister, Maidie. He shoots her an annoyed look since she promised him that she would not tell anyone about his awakening. She gives him a shy smile and tells him that she only told one person or two, but it mistakenly spread to everyone. The kids flock around him and bug him about his power, asking questions and whether he can move super fast like a lightning bolt. It is as if they will not run out of questions, asking whether he can jump really high, split a mountain in two, or fly to the sun and back. Super excited, the kids ask him to show them what he can do. The young man sighs at their innocent persistence but feels shy about displaying his power. They continue asking him, and even the adults start chiming in, pleading with him to show them even just a spark to quench their curiosity and anticipation. After some convincing, he finally gives in and decides to show them some party tricks, so they will not be overwhelmed by his true power. He then activates his electricity and his fingers begin to zap bolts of energy. He then creates an image of a horse out of the bolts, making the villagers gasp and open their mouths wide in awe. They all chant his name, praising him and telling him how amazing he is in their eyes. He is their hope and dreams now. Just then, a mysterious presence graces their village. He is looking for Quinn, who is the only awoken person in the domain of their village. The man stands so dignified with a wolf skin covering his head and his body covered with war scars. Quinn is surprised to see the man called Rayshak, who is the leader of the Silver Wolves. The man heard rumors that Alder had died, who was once a silver wolf. With intimidating aura and booming voice, he states that it is his responsibility to uphold the honor of their mercenary band by taking the head of whoever killed him. He then looks pointedly at Quinn and confirms that the boy was the one who dispatched Alder. Quinn does not deny the fact and states that Alder deserved his fate and to be killed. The old man agrees with him and confirms that Alder is not a good person and is just a nasty one. He acknowledges that the boy is right about slaying the vile village leader, but the mercenary code is sacred and he has to abide by it, and he must avenge his comrade. To prove his point, he immediately slashes his sword toward the boy. Quinn nearly gets injured and manages to evade the attack at the last minute. He is then shocked to see that the sword of Reshak is adorned with a gleaming arcanite. The gem on the hilt is what gives the sword an extra amount of power. The old man smirks, seeing his reaction to the sword. Reshak boasts about it, noting that his sword is an extraordinary blade. He punches the gem with his hard fist and challenges the boy to a duel to the death. Concerned about his friend, Gavin grabs a pitchfork and steps in, expressing that he will help his friend run away for his safety. However, Quinn is confident that he can fight the old man to the death. After all, he can wield the power of electricity and has a clear advantage over the leader of the Silver Wolves. He then grabs the pitchfork, planning to use it against his opponent. Seeing his resolve to fight, Gavin calls him insane for throwing himself into the wolf's den. He assures his friend that he can handle the fight, and besides, he can use this opportunity to measure the power of an arcanite sword. He smiles with confidence and accepts Reshak's challenge. Not wanting to endanger the villagers, he tells the old man that they should bring their fight outside the village. However, the old man states that it will not matter since their fight will be over in a snap. The old man swings his sword toward him and he immediately blocks the attack with his own weapon, frustrated that he cannot use his power since they are in the middle of the villagers. He cannot risk injuring them, and so he can only engage in sword fighting. To protect them and get the upper hand, he tells them to step back. He then charges toward his opponent to close their distance. Sensing his hesitation, Reshak can tell that he is worried about his friends being electrocuted. He clenches his weapon. The old man clearly knows what he is doing, and based on how he reacts, it shows that he has fought nobles before. They charge toward each other. Even if he cannot use his power of electricity to his heart's content, he can surely imbue the tines of the pitchfork with bolts of electricity to parry Reshak's attacks. Their weapons clash and the old man is impressed with how he is keeping up with him. He swings his weapon toward the old man once again and tries to read his movements. He makes another move and pounces his way to the man. After closing their distance, he throws his electricity-charged pitchfork at his opponent's direction. Reshak is not fazed by his action. However, he is not finished yet and is still hiding a trick up his sleeve. Since he cannot use his lightning bolt speed with the villagers around, he used the pitchfork to control his speed and creates another attack toward Reshak, shocking him with his unpredicted move. Seeing an opportunity to be at an advantage, he attacks his back since it is the vulnerable part. He rushes at the man, his weapon charged with bolts of electricity. However, to his utter shock, his attack bounces off and does not even faze the old man. Reshak acknowledges that his opponent is cunning and capable, but he too has a few tricks that he is hiding up his sleeves. He then removes the fur coat covering his body, and Quinn is stunned to see that underneath it is full arcanite armor, shielding the man from any attack. Seeing his shocked reaction, Reshak introduces himself again, mentioning to him that he is also known as the Noble Slayer. Fired up, the Noble Slayer is determined to show him the true power of arcanite. He then bumps his fist again at the gem, revealing that with a little stimulation, the electricity stored in the arcanite is released. So he bumps his fist on his sword once again and does the same for his shield, activating them. He figures that the boy is shocked that he has a weapon and an armor that only nobles could get their hands on. He reveals that he stole all of them from Count Ravel, and that once he is finished with the boy, he will finish Ravel next. Overwhelming with power, he vows to make it fast for Quinn to end his life with torture. The boy will be the number 6 on his list, Dead Lightning Freaks. The two clash again, and instead of focusing on the fight, he is worried about the safety of everyone. Because of this, he is restrained and can't use the full extent of his powers without the fear of endangering everyone. He ponders hard, thinking of a better way to fight the old man and looking for a way to turn his own power against him. Quinn clenches his teeth, annoyed that he got no hold on arcanites. The ore is considered the most valuable in the world, highly sought after for its unique ability to store and catalyze electricity with remarkable efficiency. Nobles often covet it, using it to forge electricity-enhancing weaponry that greatly amplifies their combat capabilities. Normally, those without the gift of electricity avoid using it entirely because the ore is extremely volatile and notoriously difficult to control. If the capacity of the arcanite is exceeded, it can overload and explode with devastating force. Anyone unskilled in handling it or unable to properly channel their electricity risks their own life simply by possessing it. In Rishak's case, his arcanite likely contains only a meager electrical charge. The old man praises his ability, adding that he lasts longer than the count's vassal that he slayed earlier. With this, he lunges again at his opponent's direction. Rishak asks if he has heard about the Baron Delisle and mentions that he has murdered the man after he annihilated his whole family. He dodges the old man's attack once again while thinking of a way to overload his arcanite. He listens as his opponent shares his abhorrent against the nobles, wanting to wipe them off the face of the earth. He continues to evade his continuous attacks that are full of contempt and disgust. Rishak marks his awakening as a noble as a sign to end his life too. There will be no exception to his hate, aiming to finish every noble out there to exact his lifelong revenge plan. The old man swings his sword with much power, wanting to split his opponent in half. Quinn sees an opening where his attack could connect, but he has to give his all to win the fight. Rishak laughs out of thrill. He is impressed with his opponent and how he put out a good fight against him, holding on much longer than the spineless baron he fought and killed. However, this won't last anyway since he is planning to end the boy now. With this declaration, he activates the electricity in his arcanite-adorned blade and swings it at his direction. Quinn blocks his attack and tries to prevent it from connecting using his bare hands. The man laughs at the absurdity of his move since he should have stuck to dodging. Quinn keeps his hands to his opponent's blade, intercepting it from wounding him. He then calmly tells his opponent that the fight is over. Blazing with determination, the enemy in front of him might be stronger than him, but he is more skilled and isn't running out of tricks yet. He then reveals that he just pumps the sum of his power to the old man's blade. As if on cue, the arcanite sword glows under his touch and Rishak screams in great pain. A damaging explosion follows, injuring the old man on the spot. Rishak is electrocuted with an inexplainable amount of bolts that course through his body. He drops his sword on the ground and loses consciousness in the middle of the fight. While looking at his enemy's current state, Quinn thought that the charge he transferred to the arcanite sword was too much for Rishak to handle, since it looks like it messed him up. He sighs, thinking that one would need years of training to teach their body to cope up with such insane amount of electricity. Seeing him win the fight, his family and the villagers rush to his side, checking up on him. He assures them that he is okay. Rishak acknowledges his defeat and asks the young man how he was able to beat him. Quinn states that he simply used the power of Rishak's own weapon against him. The old man is surprised by this trick but accepts his fate anyway, adding that he is at least grateful that a noble like Quinn was the one who defeated him. Accepting his fate, he tells the boy to finish him once and for all, surrendering his life. However, Quinn refuses to end his life, much to his frustration. He can't accept that the boy is denying him an honorable death, insisting that he likes to abide by the mercenary code until the end. Quinn explains that he is not a mercenary and he can't force him to follow the code of the mercenaries. Grinning, he adds that he only follows the code of protectors, and according to which, once an opponent is vanquished, he will become the winner's vassal. Seeing the surprised and confused look on the man's face, Quinn clarifies that he wants Rishak, who is hailed as the noble slayer and leader of the Silver Wolves, to serve him after his defeat. The old man is stunned by his statement, but he makes it clear that it will be beneficial for both of them since they share the same desire. With fire in his eyes, he reveals that he too aims to end the nobles. Since Rishak is a skilled swordsman, he can make him the protector of his village. He appoints the Silver Wolves as the protector of his family and friends while he journeys to the capital and make preparations for sending the nobles to hell. Rishak takes a moment to process what he just heard but eventually gives in. He vows that for as long as he breathes, He will keep the village safe from those who will try to hurt everyone that is dear to him. After hearing his approval, he tells the old man to surrender his sword since he needs the arcanite to give himself a boost. After taking away the blade, he used the arcanite to forge a new blade. As he forms the new blade, he infused it with enhanced magical properties, making sure that it has strong electrical magic. After using his blacksmith skills, he eventually created a new curved sword. In the future, the nobility will switch to using this type of weapon that has proved to be more better than a normal sword. He will use this knowledge as a leverage against his enemies. After all his preparations, he wraps his sword and straps it on his back. Entrusting the safety of his village to Rishak, he bids goodbye to everyone as he starts his journey to the capital, promising to come back as soon as he can. Now he will face the reality and the fate waiting for him. In his previous life, he will enroll in the academy after leaving his hometown, and to put his plans into place, he will have to do it again, only this time he has already the leverage of having mastered his powers. He has to brace himself since it is the place where he will meet his comrades and the man who he thought is a brother to him but will later betray him, Silas. On a sunny day, a ship is gliding through the sea. Inside it is Quinn, who is looking forward to arrive in Lutetia soon. He smiles, thinking that once the ship docked in the port, he will present himself to authorities. It is a prerequisite that the newly awoken nobles have to declare themselves in order to enroll in the academy. There, different nobles from different walks of life will be given a chance to enroll in the most prestigious academy for the newly awokens. They almost will never realize that their power isn't a divine gift, but merely a stroke of luck. They were all struck by lightning that some of them wouldn't even remember because of the trauma it brought. They awaken thinking that they have been chosen by the divinity. Back in the ship, a crew announces that the dinner is ready. Quinn contemplates using his time in the sea voyage to practice his swordsmanship skills and to relax before enrolling in the academy and be a student again. Just then, a woman in cloak starts to get seasick and bumps into him. He offers to help her, but is shocked to see that it is his sister after all. Maidie removes her cloak and declares that she will join him in the capital. He immediately turns down her idea and tells her that she needs to get on the next ship bound for their village, thinking how risky her decision to join him is. Witnessing how worrywart her brother can be, she assures him that she won't do any reckless things. She has decided and won't just sit and rot in the village. Quinn's face turns serious, noting that her insistence to come with him is insane. This will be dangerous for her, and he won't subject her to anything that will cause her harm. She doesn't back down. In fact, she even interrogates her brother why in the span of a day his swordsmanship improved tremendously, and not only that, he also wields electricity like he has been doing it for years. The shift in his power has greatly made him selfish, and his sister can sense that he is hiding something. He sighs and tells his "I came from the future" spiel again. Exasperated from his made-up stories, she cuts him off, annoyed that he is treating their situation as a joke. She figures that when he fell from his horse and landed on his head, this messed up his memories. This also explains the change in his personality and all the incoherent rambling. Quinn mentions that their parents would never let her join him in his journey in the city. She counters this by showing him the letter that their mother wrote saying that she allowed Maidie to join him. In return, he needs to look after her while she fulfills her dream of seeing and living in the capital. In short, he needs to babysit her while she is in his care. Having no choice, he just heeds the words of their mother and follows his sister, who is excited now for dinner. At the ship's food hall, Quinn fondly observes his sister. Maidie is the kind of person that has always knew what she wants in life. This version of his life, he successfully protected her from tragedy and saved her from Alder. He vows to himself that he will protect her from any harm now that they will explore the capital together. Just then, a group of knights enter the ship, announcing that they are on a hunt for a noble killer, revealing that Count Ravel was murdered. They will award 10 pieces of gold to anyone who comes forward with the information. Maidie is shocked and nervous by the turn of events, knowing that her brother is the one who is involved in this. A knight approaches them and asks their reason for traveling to the capital, doubting if they are on the run. Quinn flatly denies this and comes up with an excuse that they are a married couple on their honeymoon, making Maidie gasp in surprise. The knight becomes suspicious since they look nervous and notes that the count was killed by a man wielding electricity. As he is about to ask if he is newly awoken, the ship comes to a sudden halt, followed by a strong and harsh impact, causing some barrels to fall down inside the ship. They are in a dilemma after a rorqual shows up and collides with the ship, the crew frantically ready the harpoon to send the monster back. Quinn warns them about its tail. As if on cue, the rorqual flaps its tail towards the man, easily destroying the harpoon. The knights start to panic as well, not knowing how to deal with the problem. Quinn realizes that the creature is aggressive after they strayed into its territory. Normally, an electric bolt would be enough to scare it away. However, he has to be careful about using his powers around the soldiers, especially since they are suspicious of him. If they discover that he is newly awoken, he will be their primary suspect. With this, he has to rely solely on his combat skills and reflexes. He then grabs a rope and glides through the ship. He unsheathes his sword, thinking of driving it away with a single strike. Leaping onto the target, he swings his sword, giving it a slash of his sword. He is surprised that its hide is rock solid. He bounces off because of its impact. Meidi immediately rushes to his side and checks if he is okay. Seeing that it seems hopeless, the knights steal the only life raft and ride it themselves. Once a Rorqual decided on a foe, it won't stop attacking until it's destroyed. The water beast collides its enormous and scaly body against the ship, wanting to split it in two. If this continues, the ship will be reduced to flotsam in no time. Since he has no other choice, Quinn dives into the water where nobody can see him using his powers. He then waits as the Rorqual gets closer. He clenches his sword and anticipates the beast coming to his way. He produces lightning bolts in his hand and zaps the water beast with it, electrocuting it until it swims away. He then surfaces out of the water, thinking that the Rorqual will take out its anger on another victim since it is prideful. Meanwhile, the three knights frantically row away from the ship. To their absolute horror, the water beast appears near their boat looking angrier than before. It then took out its frustration on them, destroying the boat in one strike. Meanwhile, back in the ship, Meidi throws a rope at her brother to help him get back on the deck. Upon landing at the deck, he is relieved that the ship is still at one piece. Meidi suddenly hugs him, thankful that her brother is safe. The crew celebrates as well, grateful to him for saving their lives. They hurl him up in the air, cheering as they go. Later, Quinn is feeling lethargic after being thrown into the air for how many times a while ago. The captain of the ship declares that they are about to dock in Lutetia in a few hours. Meanwhile, Quinn looks forward in meeting the nobles of the land and thinks about his reunion with Silas. Quinn looks peaceful and sound asleep on the deck. However, his dream is far from it, as he dreams about his past with Silas, calling each other brother and making promises that nothing will ever separate them, until his best friend betrayed him and just used him to advance his plans. Quinn wakes up from his nightmare. He is drenched in sweat and shaken from the bad memories. Later, they finally arrive at the capital of the Kingdom of Gallia. Meidi is in awe at how tall the buildings are. She cannot help but ogle at the sight offered by the city. Meanwhile, since he had lived there in his previous life, Quinn isn't as impressed as his sister and is just trying to remember what it looked like. They disembark the ship, and Meidi cannot help her excitement upon walking within the city for the first time in her life. They arrive at the hotel they are staying in, and Quinn instructs his sister to book a room for one night. He leaves first as he needs to report to the local authorities of his presence as newly awoken to enroll at the academy. He is about to leave when Meidi reminds him of the payment they need to make to the hotel. He gives her the gold coins that the guards left on the ship, since it looks like they will not be needing it anymore. Meidi squeals in delight, stating that they are rich now and they could buy a whole street if they want. Quinn quietly recalls that the prices in Lutetia are steep, and the gold coins they have will barely cover a few nights. He leaves to report to the authorities and reminds his sister not to cause any trouble while he is away. She smiles at him, assuring him that she will only spend their money on essential things. Quinn only shakes his head, knowing that would not be entirely true. The chosen one is what they call those who were accepted at the academy. However, getting in is not that easy. Every day, hordes of people show up there claiming that they have awoken. The guard calls up the next in line and instructs the man to demonstrate his power. Nervous, the man tries to concentrate and focus to show his power. He swears that when he woke up that morning, he felt oddly upbeat. He then produces a zap of lightning in his hands. However, the guards suddenly show up and reveal that they know he is cheating. They roll up his sleeve and find the device with an arcanite gem that he is using to produce lightning. The guards beat him up as punishment for his cheating. Unfortunately for the guy, he did not successfully fool the guards. If one passes the test, they can ask for a money reward, and this rule attracts swindlers. After passing the exam and taking the reward money, the criminals usually go back to their holes and hide forever. The guard calls the next person in line, who is Quinn. The man warns him not to deceive them for his own good. Without wasting any time, Quinn displays his power and conjures a skull out of his lightning bolts. The guard is stunned by his power, stating that he is truly a chosen one. They instruct him to proceed down the hall to finalize his academy admission. He passes his details to the guard and thinks that it is easier than he thought, and they did not even ask him how he got his powers. He walks through the hallway that is so familiar to him. He looks at the other end of it, and there he sees someone he loathes so much that he drops his form and is barely able to breathe. Silas picks up his form and reads his name aloud as if memorizing it. He hands the form to him with a smile and says that he is new too. He cannot help but boil in rage since his traitor best friend is in front of him. He recalls how he lost his life because of him and contemplates killing him on the spot. He clenches his hand, trying to restrain himself. Sensing tension, Silas asks if there is something wrong with him. Quinn says no, so Silas assumes that he is just tired because of his awakening and suggests that he take a rest. He then takes his leave and wishes him well. However, seeing him so relaxed and smiling somewhat triggers him more, and this makes him lose all his restraint. He unleashes the electric bolts in his body and grabs his sword, lunging towards Silas. Enraged, he swings his sword towards the man with full force. Just in time, Silas manages to unsheath his sword and block his attack. Suddenly, someone comes in between them and breaks them apart. The old man praises them for being impressive, stating that it is good that they are eager to test their new powers. The old man, named Tavio, a professor, stands so proud, noting that the sound of swords clashing will bond men faster. He introduces himself and states that he specializes in the art of combat. He assures them that they will have plenty of time to spar during training, so they need to slow down first. Quinn recognizes the man who is known to be the mightiest warrior in the capital. He is the key figure of the liberation of the Order, which was the group who will kill him 20 years from now. Silas smiles and apologizes to the professor. He points out that they just awakened their powers, so keeping them under control is not easy. So, he extends his hand towards Quinn and apologizes if he somehow offended him, looking forward to crossing blades with him in the future. Quinn accepts his hand, thinking that he is already powerful, way more than he expected. However, this will not stop him from killing the traitor. Before that, he tells himself that he has to restrain himself, or else his life will end the way it did the first time. Besides, Silas owes him answers as to why he betrayed him. Meanwhile, a man from another room is observing the two new students, thinking that there is great potential in them, and so, they must test their loyalty immediately. However, he is not sure if they can survive what is coming to them. First day of class, the students are busy chattering and making friends. Meanwhile, Quinn walks down the hallway, thinking back on how he trained his body for intense study. Though his strength is nothing like how it once was, he is still far stronger than any newly awakened. He must keep his power hidden so he can avoid unwanted attention. No one can know how powerful he is. In the martial arts class, Professor Tavio introduces himself as their new instructor. He discusses with his class that he needs to check their combat skills and notes that some of them are already skilled fighters. One of the students immediately volunteers to start the training. He remembers how one of the students died during the training, overwhelmed by a strong surge of lightning that coursed through his body. Lightning spares no one, and it strikes children, adults, even the elderly. Every year, dozens of the newly awakened enroll in the academy to truly master the power they have gained. After explaining the rules, Tavio declares that the lesson will now begin. He then points at Quinn and asks his name. The boy introduces himself and states that he is from the Eastern Province. The professor smiles at him, recalling that he was the one earlier who was so eager to test his strength. He likes the boy's fighting spirit, so he knows that he is the right partner to choose for the parry. He then calls his partner, Erwin Desac. The man stands proud and menacing, thousands of electric bolts almost palpable in the air with his presence. He is the eldest among the Desac, and they are descendants of the first awakened tyrants who ruled the land from the shadows. They are the men who killed him, and he loathes them with every fiber of his being. And with his power now, he cannot stand a chance against Erwin, so he must stay calm and avoid reckless risks. He admits to the professor that he can be hot-headed sometimes and tells him that he will lose a fight against Erwin. This makes the professor laugh, noting that he has become reasonable now that he is up against a formidable foe. Tavio then asks Erwin if any of the newcomers catch his eye, and the prince says that not a single one has managed to pique his interest. He shakes his head, stating that the year's batch is pitifully weak and that one of them is so old he is likened to a fossil. He then points to the guy and orders the guards to bring the old man to him. The man is dragged forward. Quinn is shocked by the twist. By dodging the fight, he has thrown the old man under the cart, and surely, Erwin will crush him. Tavio laughs at the situation, clearly mocking the old man. He declares that on his signal, they need to unleash their lightning at their foe. He reminds them not to cripple their opponent but also tells them not to hold back. Quinn clenches his fist, noting that most newly awakened cannot even focus electricity well enough to kill. However, for noble bloodlines, it is a whole different story. Their powers bloom early, and by adulthood they are already fierce warriors. Facing his opponent, Erwin tells the man to brace himself, noting that weaklings do not last long in the academy. Knowing that the old man will surely die, Quinn cannot just stand and watch, saying that he should do something. Moving recklessly, he lunges into the fight and tries to stop it, countering Erwin's attack. The prince smiles, thrilled at his unexpected move. Tavio claps his hands, impressed that the student is brave enough to insert himself into the duel. Although he is brave, they still fail to meet Erwin's attack with one of his own, even though Erwin only used a fraction of his power. With this, Quinn can only join Group D. If he works hard, then he might be promoted. This does not help Quinn since Group D is the weakest of the awakened. Instead of getting bummed, he is quite happy that he will not be troubled by the Desac nor his cronies. Just then, a classmate of Erwin steps in, angry that he is insulted by Quinn interrupting his duel. He suggests that they punish Quinn for interrupting his duel. Erwin smirks, saying that a fly cannot insult a man's honor and that a lion like him does not care about the affairs of insects. The next day at the Academy banquet hall, as he brings his food to the table, he notices that the old man is sitting alone, and no one wants to sit with him, shunned because of what happened in the duel. In his past life, he too was obsessed with power. He met Silas, and together they lived and breathed to earn a place in Group Alpha. Together, they were unstoppable. Since Group A was reserved for noble offspring from birth, they brutally trained until they finally made it into Group A, and that gave them a ticket into the noble elite and their first step toward tearing it down from within. This time, he will keep his distance from the elites and will just become an outcast. He sits opposite the old man and greets him, introducing himself. He asks for the man's name as he did not catch it earlier. The old man apologizes to him and mentions that he has taken a vow of silence, but since Quinn saved his life, he will break it for him. He then tells Quinn that his name is Shin, and he will now go back to his vow. Quinn finds him odd, but having an old friend in the academy be mute might be the best thing he could have hoped for. He can easily blend into the background and no one will notice him as he executes his plan. He plans on gathering as much intel as possible on the Desac and their allies, and him being an outcast ensures no one will bother him as he collects their information. Meanwhile, in the background, someone from the cafeteria is roaming around to offer seconds to the students. The woman offers seconds to Quinn, and he is shocked to see his sister in the cafeteria uniform. He grabs her hand and drags her to a corner, demanding why she is working at the academy. She tells him that someone has to work to earn money because the prices in Lutetia are steep. He shakes his head in frustration and tells her to get a job somewhere else. Just then, Zeke appears, misinterpreting the commotion as Quinn harassing the maid. With his chains wrapped around him, he approaches Quinn with an intimidating aura, vowing to teach him some manners. The students start to murmur upon seeing Zeke getting worked up against the newly awakened one. Quinn silently berates himself for getting into trouble the moment he decided to stay away from the radar. Zeke has been breathing fire at him since he stood up to Erwin during the test. The students look at him with pitying eyes now that he has gotten the elites on his bad side, especially after Zeke is hell-bent on punishing him for his insolence against Prince Erwin. Zeke tells him that he isn't in his lowly village, so he'd better show some manners. He shouldn't harass the maids in the academy and must abide by the rules at all times. He is nobody, so he should not act like one. To remind him of their difference in status, he shows him the brooch that signifies he is one of the elites, while Quinn is not. He may have managed to earn a drop of noble blood, but he is still a nobody compared to them. He then grabs Quinn by his collar and reiterates that he is nothing but a dirt blood. The high blood are the descendants of the ancient noble houses. Their powers awaken in childhood, and they already have noble status by the time they enter the academy, and the drop of blood proves their rank. Each year, newly awakened hopefuls join them, eager to master their own strength. However, those students are branded as belonging to a dirt blood's place. To appease the man in front of him, he apologizes and states that he knows his place and didn't mean to offend anyone with his actions. While he is explaining, he is shocked to receive a beating from Zeke, who takes offense when he speaks without his permission. He apologizes again like an obedient sheep, begging to be forgiven. Still annoyed at him, Zeke reminds him that he should use that as a lesson. However, he notices that his face doesn't have a trace of the strike left on him. Quinn is doomed the moment the man notices it. Since he shielded himself with a thin layer of electricity, Zeke clenches his hand in anger, insulted that Quinn keeps on clashing with him and provoking him. Quinn really doesn't want any trouble, and he only acted out of pure reflex to protect himself from an assault. Angered, Zeke decides to teach him a proper lesson by launching him across the room with nothing but his sheer strength. This leaves Quinn no other choice, forcing him to finally decide to fight. However, he still can't unleash his full power. Suddenly, Zeke charges at him, producing electric bolts and sending them his way. This immediately deals heavy damage to Quinn, injuring him. Since he needs to win the fight, he decides to use more power, unleashing additional electric charge to block the impending attack of his opponent. However, this still proves lacking, as Zeke continues to overpower him. The Highborn smirks at his misery, mocking him for being nothing more than that and clearly standing no chance against him. He sends more electric bolts in Quinn's direction, injuring the boy even further. He can't believe that Zeke is far stronger than him. The Highborn approaches him and commends him for lasting that long. However, he intends to finish the fight now and make him a lesson for all the freshmen to see and learn from. All the freshmen are frozen in place when Zeke delivers a continuous beating to Quinn. He is slowly being drained and starts feeling like he is dying. Ruthless, Zeke tells the students to keep watching as he turns the insect into his punching bag. Zeke laughs menacingly, saying he isn't done torturing Quinn yet. Quinn gets restrained by the chains. Almost at his limit, he thinks he will be killed right then and there, regretting that he had overestimated himself. He berates himself for wasting his second chance as he feels his body can no longer take any more beating. As he is about to close his eyes, he sees his sister running toward him. He apologizes to her in his head since he can no longer stand from the injuries he sustained after the beating. He remains lying on the floor as Zeke prepares to continue punching him. Maddie begs the boy to stop hurting her brother. Through her tears, she pleads with him to stop, not wanting the guy to be hurt because of her mistake. Zeke grins, saying she should be beaten instead if she insists. He then grabs her with the intention of giving her a lesson, saying that today is her lucky day. Maddie shrieks as she gets dragged away by the highborn. Quinn pleads with Zeke not to take the girl, but his consciousness is slowly fading away. He once abandoned Maddie because of his blind thirst for revenge, and because of that, she couldn't move on with her life. He won't let that happen again, but Zeke's face looks back at him as if telling him he failed again. Quinn wakes up from his nightmare, screaming. He is in the infirmary with bandages around his body after his fight with Zeke. Shin is there, looking after him, and Quinn immediately asks about Maddie. However, the man doesn't reply, still taking a vow of silence. Just then, another man speaks beside him, checking up on his condition. He is shocked to see Silas but puts aside his anger and asks for his sister first. Silas tells him that she came back that morning, but based on her face, she had been toyed with by Zeke all night. Quinn clenches his fist, his anger palpable toward the highborns, who all believe the law does not apply to them. Silas tells him that he owes the maid his life, but when he